I don't want to be one of those people who puts words into other people's mouths, but all of this sums up what Rihanna did in 2016. So it's significantly symbolic that she said this herself. I bet you've never seen bitches twerk on water. My bitches twerk on water. No basic zone. On January 28, 2016, the prophecy manifested. Rihanna released the most streamed album by a female artist that year. Rihanna tied Michael Jackson's record for the most top 5 hits on the Billboard Hot 100 with said album that year. That same album became the first album by a Black woman to spend 500 weeks on the Billboard 200 chart, only to be beaten 9 years later. But most importantly, it became one of the blueprints for multidimensional portrayals of Black women in global music. By the end of the R8 era, Rihanna will be seen as a legend to some and a villain to others. She will receive MTV's Video Vanguard Award in 2017, handed to her by the same man who will turn heel and sick his incel dogs at her in the following decade. What was it about this album that made this phase in Rihanna's artistic career polarizing? She already spent 9 years before Anti dropped Playing a Contrarian. She pissed off her label with her edgier approach on Good Girl Gone Bad, for example. Rihanna's days of playing it safe with the Y2K pop aesthetic were over a long time ago, but the industry insisted on turning her into baby Beyonce. Songs like Bitch Better Have My Money, 4 or 5 Seconds, and American Oxygen gave hints about how far left Rihanna was taking her rebel aesthetic this time around. And by the way, before we go any further, let's do a quick refresher on why the word aesthetic is so important in these blueprint conversations, especially for the newbies here. Aesthetics are a set of principles underlying and guiding the work of a particular artist or artistic movement. An artist never chooses these principles by accident, and what they're inspired by tells a larger story about their attitudes towards themselves, the people around them, and the people they care the most about. Rihanna had placed herself first, starting with the Good Girl Gone Bad album, and that inadvertently gave her fans permission to buck what the mainstream media told them they should do or look like. But by the time 2015 came around, Rihanna was swimming with the sharks, literally, to heal and regain control of her fears, purposely putting herself in the midst of danger to confront what she wouldn't before. In a Harper's Bazaar interview, Rihanna opened up about her struggles with vulnerability. Quote, I think I'm like most people. We fear the unknown and the things that we have yet to come to pass, which are the very things that don't deserve to be feared. When you give God complete control, it is very hard not to be fearless. This is someone who went through domestic abuse under public scrutiny. This is someone who critics called cute, dry, or boring, and underestimated her star power. This quote shows Rihanna on the precipice of learning what to accept and invite into her life. And with the pressures on her to produce hit after hit without becoming either a cliche or a has-been, she had to stand secure in what she felt called to symbolize as a Black woman in a fickle industry.
I've made a lot of songs that are just really, really big songs from the jump. They just blow up, and I wanted to kind of just get back to, well, not that there weren't real music, but I just wanted to focus on things that felt real, that felt soulful, that felt forever. I wanted songs that I could perform in 15 years. I wanted an album that I could perform in 15 years, not any songs that were burnt out. I find that when I get on stage now, I don't want to perform a lot of my songs because they don't feel like me. So I want to make songs that are timeless.
She had this premonition earlier in her career, but now it was time to walk or twerk on water fearlessly. Initially, Rihanna hired Kanye West as executive producer for Anti, and in 2015, that was a safe, guaranteed cheat code. But this was her era of fearlessness, so she took back the reins and named herself executive producer instead. Quote, I honestly think how much fun it would be to live my reputation. People have this image of how wild and crazy I am, and I'm not everything they think of me. The reality is that the fame, the rumors, this picture means this, another picture means that, it really freaks me out. It made me back away from even wanting to attempt to date. It's become second nature for me to just close that door and just be okay with that. I'm always concerned about whether people have good or bad intentions. This Vanity Fair quote from Rihanna defines Anti more than any official post and press release often associated with the album. The definition everyone ran with was from a picture posted to Rihanna's Instagram, which stated that Anti is, quote, a person opposed to a particular policy, activity, or idea. She continued by saying that her album, quote, strives to make an impact by doing the very antithesis of what the public expects. There wasn't anything explicitly political in the track list of Anti in the traditional sense of ideology or agendas. Instead, Rihanna's shift in aesthetics primarily stemmed from prioritizing herself, and in a sense, that was a social political statement for one of the world's most famous Black women. I'm not everything they think of me. That was the album's thesis. When you look at his track list sequentially, you'll see it seesawing between the bold sexuality that the public began associating with Rihanna and the fragility of the walls she put up to protect herself from harm. Professor Amina Mama from UC Davis's School of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies sums up this tightrope Black women walk on when she wrote, quote, women define security in terms of freedom from violence and the fear of violence. Women whose bodies are so often abused by men to spite other men define security in terms of bodily integrity. Rihanna's album explores her decisions around when and how lovers have access to her body and what they're allowed to do with it. But the twerking on water comes in with the fine line between what society deems as gratuitous raunchiness versus artful sensuality. Rihanna's political statement is, I will twerk and I will fuck and I will love on my own terms, and you do not have the right to tell me what that says about me. However, I have to be honest about how self-conscious that still makes me feel. The miracle is in how the critics and public receive this message. Rihanna, in my humble opinion, is the only Black female musician who has successfully forced society to appreciate a complex depiction of Black women's sexuality. Through her album, Black women saw what bodily integrity looks like. Rihanna represented the experience of bodily freedom that Black women have been deprived of when society is hell-bent on reducing them to sapphires or Jezebels. The late Nigerian author Buchi Emecheta put it this way, quote, the more I think about it, the more I realize that we women set impossible standards for ourselves, that we make life intolerable for one another. I cannot live up to your standards, so I have to set my own. Listening to Anti was a rite of passage for many Black women, including myself. It was an invitation to live life free and with clarity, rejecting the confusion from society's conflicting POV of us, which explains the album's ramifications and impact a decade later. Remember, I said Rihanna was both the villain and legend after Anti's debut. There will always be backlash whenever a Black woman secures her physical and emotional security, because it leaves men powerless. It leaves others wrestling with what happens to them when Black women's bodies and minds are no longer theirs to control. I previously wrote about the history of misogynoir in mass media and how incel culture is predicated on anti-Blackness, colonialism, and slavery. You can listen to a snippet of that analysis in the video linked above and in the description. In sum, several prominent Black men, along with their horde of stans, saw Rihanna as an affront rather than an aspiration. They didn't see her as the ideal woman to attain, one who was confident in herself and the positive effect she could have on them. They saw her instead as a reflection of their diminution. And rather than do the work to address that vulnerability and inferiority, the same way Rihanna and almost every Black woman does most of their lives, they lashed out. Those same purveyors of this incel grift are, unironically, the ones perpetuating similar attacks against the Black female artists that are following Rihanna's blueprint. See Aiden Ross v. Doechii, for example. Which is pathetic and sad because Anti is not anti-man propaganda. When you look at its sophistication and honesty, you'll see it's actually the opposite. It's an invitation for Black women to connect with the men in their lives on an equal, loving, sensible level, in a way that leaves them both feeling desired for more than just exploitation. Anti should have been a win for the perpetual gender wars, leaving both men and women feeling seen and valued. Sadly, we're still waiting for a world that allows this. Patriarchy is one hell of a drug. Anti was one dose of the antidote to quell this addiction to corrupt absolute power. All we can hope is that the Black women following Rihanna's footprints continue to bring us closer to a permanent cure. The Leading Like a Lady podcast was created to remind Black women, young and old, that acting like a lady is exactly what the world needs in leadership. Don't forget to subscribe to the blog so that you receive updates on when we post directly to your email.